You know what sucks? Whenever you mention The Amazing Spider-Man, the remake from 2012 comes to mind, and not the original comic from the 60s. Now, it's not the worst movie of all time, it's just so extremely bland and forgettable. Now, while I could bash this film by reviewing it in its entirety, my purpose here is just to pick one aspect of the film and explain how it misses the mark. Specifically in this video, Uncle Ben's death is one aspect of the Amazing Spider-Man series that completely fails. To discuss this in detail, an analysis of Uncle Ben's speech is required. Now, it's not that his speech is tired or anything, it's in fact his dialogue is written so poorly and vague to what the good things Peter has a responsibility to do.
But your father lived by a philosophy, a principle. He believed that if you could do good things for other people, you had a moral obligation to do those things. That's what's at stake here. Not choice, responsibility.
This is in fact a subpar adaptation of the Ultimate Spider-Man conversation between Ben and Peter. The main problem here is that the conversation is completely rushed, not allowing the audience to process what Uncle Ben means. It's the script's fault. The dialogue in the Ultimate version is just more well thought out and feels like two characters having an actual conversation with each other. Your father had a philosophy that he held to pretty strongly, and it's one that served him very, very well. He believed if there were things in this world that you had to offer, things you did better than anyone else, things that you could do that helped people, or made people feel better about themselves, well, he believed that it wasn't just a good idea to do those things. He believed it was your responsibility to do those things. Don't try to be something else, don't try to be less. Great things are going to happen to you in your life, Peter. Great things. And with that will come great responsibility. Do you understand? Great responsibility. Overall, it's just better written thanks to Brian Michael Bendis. You know what's really sad? Is when the movie from 2002 and a cartoon from 2008 did it better. Let me ask you, what's more memorable and has that special charm and heart to it?
Probably deserved what happened. But just because you can beat him up doesn't give you the right to. Remember, with great power comes great responsibility.
Uncle Ben, if you could do something and do it better than anyone else, then it wouldn't be wrong to, cash in on your talents, right?
Well, son, that would depend on what talents we're talking about. Listen, kiddo, I went through exactly the same thing at your age.
No, not exactly.
Point is, you're changing into the man you're going to be. And just because you can do something doesn't mean you should. With great power, there must also come great responsibility.
The Uncle Ben death is over milk. Sounds funny, right? Yeah, on paper, sure. But that's not the problem here. Yeah, Raimi's version is 10 times more memorable, and even the 60s cartoon pulls straight from the Amazing Fantasy.
Hey, Tiff, little help? Not my policy. Somebody stop that dude! Hey, stop!
Bobby, call the cops! You could have taken that guy apart. Now he's gonna get away with my money.
I missed the part where that's my problem.
What's with you, mister? All you had to do was trip him or hold him just for a minute.
That's your problem, not mine. Sorry, pal, I'm through being pushed around. From now on, I look out for number one, and that means me.
But the main problem here is how Uncle Ben dies in the 2012 film. Ben dies by his own doing. He is responsible for his own death. Ben laughably dives for the gun that a criminal dropped in a poorly edited scene. Take note that the criminal wasn't causing any major harm to other people around him, but once Ben dived for the gun, the guy had no choice but to defend himself. The issue here is Peter Parker, at least in the comics, is motivated by guilt, because he is responsible for Uncle Ben's death. This is what pushes him to become Spider-Man. But in the 2012 film, he has no reason to feel responsible or guilty, because Ben is responsible for his own death. It makes no sense. It's like, what were the writers thinking? Not only does Sam Raimi do it better, but even the cartoon from the 60s understood the main motivation of the character.
Uncle Ben is dead. Yes, Uncle Ben is dead, and in a sense it's really I who killed him.
The death in the 2002 film is more impactful for the Peter Parker character because the Uncle Ben speech was not rushed. It actually felt like Uncle Ben was trying to get through to Peter and teach him a lesson. Especially with the line, "Just be careful who you change into," which relates back to when Peter lets the robber go and he says, "Oh, I missed the part, that's my problem," indicating he could possibly be changing into something Uncle Ben wouldn't be proud of. But it takes Uncle Ben's death for Peter to realize this, and Peter's emotions are portrayed wonderfully by Tobey Maguire as he's crying his heart out. And you really see the display of emotions on his face, sadness, anger, and frustration, all in one shot as he gets ready to chase down Uncle Ben's killer. Now, one more glaring problem in the Amazing Spider-Man film. Peter Parker never finds the Uncle Ben killer. He never gets that closure. It's a plot point that is completely abandoned so they can push in the lizard into the plot. It's never addressed again, only brought up once in the sequel that Uncle Ben has passed. Even though Peter realizes that the same guy who robbed the liquor store was the same person who shot Uncle Ben, I still don't believe that this version of Peter Parker learned the theme of responsibility. My evidence to support this is in the final act of the film, Captain Stacy's death. After the fight with the lizard, Captain Stacy makes Peter Parker promise to leave Gwen out of his personal life because he will make enemies. Peter Parker does agree to this promise at first, but at the end of the film, he chooses to be with Gwen, as opposed to Tobey's Peter Parker, who rejected Mary Jane because he valued her safety more than his own happiness. This just proves that Garfield's Peter Parker is a selfish person. Peter Parker as a character is anything but selfish. Sam Raimi's Spider-Man film understood the theme of responsibility, but unfortunately the 2012 film did not. My main argument for this thesis is if you're going to do the Uncle Ben death, do it right or don't do it at all.
I should drop you. Take what you took from Ben Parker. But he wouldn't approve. With great power comes great responsibility.